Where is he?
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the Star Trek family, if you are just joining us, my name is Mark Sickle, and I am your host of the Star Trek family. Today's Zoom session is the culmination of an entire month-long celebration of DS9's 30th anniversary, which first aired on televisions on January 3rd, 1993. To help us celebrate this momentous milestone, we are honored to be joined by one of the series' main actors, our beloved Dr. Julian Bashir, actor Alexander Siddig. Sid, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to join you guys. It's nice to meet you all.
Definitely. First of all, let me just say happy 30th anniversary to you on DS9. It blows my mind that it's been 30 years.
It's been 30 years. It's astonishing, isn't it? And this anniversary would have come whatever happened. So
yeah, exactly. True.
It's astonishing.
I'm totally curious. How does it feel to you that this show that you worked on, this role that you played 30 years ago, is not only still relevant, but it's gaining popularity through the streaming age, and it's still inspiring people?
It's wonderful. I mean, it's really terrific, isn't that? I mean, that's something quite unique. It's like winning some sort of emotional lottery. Something you did so many years ago, and you kind of disposably, you didn't, it wasn't precious about it. It was sort of, got up and went to work, and we weren't that popular at the time. We were just sort of bubbling away at the back of the stove as if like, a pot of bone broth or something for later. And we ended up being quite a popular show, and found a home in the hearts of a lot of really wonderful people.
Oh my God, yes.
Definitely. And I can tell you there's a lot of fans here on the Zoom, members of the family that are count DS9 as their favorite show. So
I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm a big Star Trek fan, pretty much of the whole genre, but I come from really I'm from the next generation. I did watch a little bit of the classic back in the day, but it was already pretty old school by the time I was even a kid. I did get the next generation when I was in my early 20s, when I was at college, and hanging out in London with roommates and stuff. So we would go down to Blockbuster, pick up a couple of tapes, take them back, and just binge watch 4 or 5 episodes that you get on that tape. And so that was before I even knew DS9 existed. So I was already kind of a nerd from way back.
Oh, that's cool.
Well, you're in great company, because we're all in the same boat with you.
Remember how unpopular we were?
I just can't believe it. I really can't.
I know. We used to have to, Trekkies used to have to rebrand themselves as Trekkers, whatever that meant. And then Galaxy Quest came out and just kind of burst the bubble, and it was kind of great. And since then, and the advent of the internet and how literate this group is, particularly on computers, everybody just stormed it, and now everybody wants to be a nerd.
So wonderful.
Yeah.
Before I dive into my questions, I wanted to just kind of get a little bit of business out of the way and see if there was any plugs you wanted to put in. I know you just came off of 4 months of filming. Is that correct?
Yeah. I don't particularly. I mean, I don't know. There's not a lot I can say as just an actor about shows. The producers own the publicity machine and all of that stuff. But I did do a show called Fallen, which a lot of people might enjoy, with the wonderful Sarah Niles, who, if anybody has seen Ted Lasso, she plays the therapist who comes along in the 2nd season and haunts him. And we basically are the old folk at an institution full of youngsters, not kids, but cute 22-year-olds, lots of everybody. And it's called Fallen, based on a series of books written a few years ago, and it's a sort of kind of nearly fantasy. It's fallen angels, so
okay.
But they don't know it. So we'll see. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say, but that'll be coming out someplace soon, I should imagine.
All right, we'll have to keep an eye out for that. And of course, you just did something very special with one of your fellow DS9 actors, yes? with Andy Robinson?
Absolutely. We read an excerpt from his novel, which is beautiful, Stitch in Time, which he's reading the entirety of. And he just said, "Well, I said, can you join me for a few minutes and let's do this. Let's go back to the old days and get Bashir and Garrick out of the closet and dust them down." And that's what we did. So it's always great to work with Andy. He's just such a breath of fresh air in this time when everyone's a little bit opaque. He is what you see is what you get, and you get it in bucket loads from Andy.
Oh, that's so funny. I haven't quite seen it yet, but I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And I will have a link up at the end of the Zoom for anybody who hasn't seen that yet. So
Right.
very cool. So I wanted to kind of start by taking you back to the very beginning. We're going to take you back to 1992.
Ooh.
And yes, you have just landed this role as Dr. Julian Bashir.
Yeah.
August 18th, 1992 was your first day of filming on DS9. And so you walk into this, what is one of the most complex filming sets that's ever been created.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what was going through your mind when you stepped into this world and you saw all the vibrant details of the promenade and corks and the ops and the infirmary. What were going through your mind when you saw all this?
Well, we were there like a couple of days before we started filming because they did a press launch. And so we were wheeled out in uniform in front of the world's press. And, when Paramount want to sing a song for the press to arrive, boy, do they arrive. There must have been 40, 50 different publications and,
Wow.
television stations and whatnot arrived at the studio. And and I had butterflies. I'd never been in anything like that before. I wouldn't say I was nervous because I was too dumb to be nervous. I didn't have any idea about what was in store for me. And but I did get these kind of butterflies. It's like, wow, all these shiny actors everywhere. Because all 7 or 8 of us were there. And we had to take those original photographs. And when we actually got to work, we had such a professional cast. Rene Aubergenois, of course, and Armin Shimmerman had been around the block. Those guys had done a lot of work, especially Rene, and a lot of people knew him from other shows already. And he kind of calmed the room, because he had such a mild and reassuring presence about him that us kids like Terry and I and Sirach were sort of relaxed by him, and so he would crack a few jokes, and Armin would crack hundreds. Never stopped cracking jokes. But it was very, very professional with Avery, who at first appeared to me quite severe, quite strict. So, and he was clearly our boss. He was number 1 on the call sheet, and that's everything revolves around that guy. So I just sort of sat tight and tried not to put my head above the parapet and just tried to remember my lines and get out there and get home. And I rented an apartment on a street called North Gardner Street, very modest apartment with almost no furniture, except like a computer and a modem, and I could sort of hook up to the online. The gaming community was my in. I played a game called Ultimate Online, and I just dove into that to get myself away, and then walked around Hollywood, which was surreal. It was just amazing coming from where I was coming from in London, which is a largely Asian community in South London, called Tooting, beautiful, colorful, loads of markets everywhere, to West Hollywood, and these strapping young men who were going to the gym everywhere. I was like, this is crazy. So I eventually got used to it. I mean, they'd just beaten the living daylights out of Rodney King before we arrived, so LA was a kind of tinder pot. And I went down Crenshaw Boulevard to just go and have a look, and it was still smoking. There was still embers smoking. That's how fresh those riots were after that happened. So it was actually kind of appropriate that we came into that, because the show kind of dealt with that sort of a lot of those issues.
Right.
And we had it, we were living there, you know, we were dealing with it as well, psychologically. So it was all very surreal from a young man from the UK who really had no plans to come to the States.
I can only imagine. I never got a chance to visit the set, but I can only imagine walking into that and just being overwhelmed by the immensity of the
It's
complexity of all the details. Yeah. Yeah.
At the time, they boasted it was the largest indoor set in the world, and I believe them. I mean, it took up the entire hangar. You know, the whole place. Walked in, and you just saw plyboard, and you sort of squeeze around, and you find an entrance, and boom, there's the promenade. And everything is there. The med bay's there, and Cisco's office is there, and the Odo's office is there, and Quark's is there, and there's an upstairs and stairs, 3 levels, if I remember correctly.
goodness.
Wow.
And that was just one stage. And then we had a second stage and a third stage where we would do like planetary landings and, you know, make rocks and all that sort of stuff. And then the second stage had the Defiant and a bunch of shuttles and all sorts of other stuff. So it was and then across the road was the Next Generation. Those guys were only in their 3rd season. So it was just a Star Trek factory, where none of us, even the Next Gen guys who were by that time wildly famous and successful, but they still didn't know what was in store for them. They didn't really have a clue. And they had a completely different character to us because they were jolly and they would always sing stuff and do practical jokes on each other. And we were all really somber and just just did the work. That was the most important. We had these professional actors in our company, Avery and Renee and Armin. And so we just did what they did, and they just went to work, and then they clocked out when they clocked out, and that was it. And they forgot about it. And then they came back when they had to come back. So I think I was lucky because it wasn't too glamorous.
I was actually going to ask you about that earlier, later on, but I was about the sort of the tone or the mood on set. So that's really, it's interesting that you say that it was more somber than, say, the Next Generation set. So
yeah, I mean, they thought we were really square, the Next Generation guys. They thought, who are those losers? They're not taking, they're not lighting the candle at both ends. They're not grabbing life by the hair. We were really professional. I mean, we just did the job and got the hell out of there. And we didn't really talk to each other in between times. Armin would throw a party once a year for everybody. And we'd go to Majel Barrett's, the late Majel's party every year, which was surreal. She lives in a classic Hollywood, lived in a classic Hollywood house in Bel Air or somewhere. You knew it was worth gazillions of dollars when you walked in there.
Oh my gosh.
And she would throw an Oscar party. So we would everyone from all over the industry would come to this Oscar party, and they would have a bet on which, a bucket, and you could do a sweepstake, I think it's called, on what you thought the Oscar winners would be. And I remember she had a room downstairs, which I guess Gene had too, which was decorated like a jungle, with sofas and chairs, but it was jungle and plants everywhere and jungle soundtrack. Woohoo! It's kind of wild. So I sat down there and I would, at parties, I always shrink. I'd turn into I'm a Cinderella. So I would happily just find one person to talk to and just use them all night to avoid talking to anybody else. I'm sure a lot of people have that MO. You can't handle too many people. You just find one and you bore the living daylights out of them for 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
I would have never thought that.
I'm curious, when you landed this part as Bashir, was there something about the character that spoke to you, something that made you really excited about portraying this character?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a very present process. I mean, I was very in the present. I didn't project to very far into the future. I was 27, 26. I mean, I just didn't have that equipment to do that. And the writers were really they just had a clean slate for him. They had a blank page, but really, apart from they thought he was going to have an affair with Terry Farrell, with Jadzia. That was kind of where they were going to go. And then Andy Robinson walked in the door and everything changed. I mean, the character took a different direction and he became much more ambiguous, and he was still a young, overly enthusiastic puppy dog that constantly peed on the mat, and needed, didn't ask to be taken outside in time. One of those, I've literally dragged my dog peeing out of my front door. It's like, no. But she had a lot of that kind of over enthusiastic, and makes huge errors in character judgment errors, mistakes of massive proportions, not really understanding it. And no wonder Jadzia wanted nothing to do with him, the most immature guy on the station. She's one of the most mature, 700 years old or something. People, it's like, no. So that kind of had that was funny for a long time. And then Worf came and turned everything around. But it was, we improvise. I felt like we were improvising the character. The only important thing that I felt was necessary, and I think the writers too, was that he develop in real time, that he genuinely is not great at the beginning of everything, and he genuinely becomes better as he gets older. And I think they did a really, really good job with that. I think of all the characters on many TV shows that I've seen over the years, I've never seen quite that arc of whoa, from an adult point of view. It's often kids grow up, and that's great. You see total kids, but an adult going through changes that we all do, feeling awkward, feeling upset about themselves, feeling anxious, making huge professional mistakes, getting better instead of, cowering in a corner, going back and getting it right. I thought that was really great, and I loved him for that, Bashir.
I would tend to agree with you. In fact, that segues right into my next question, which, we just got done talking about right before you joined, the folks on the call. We were talking about how DS9, hands down in the Star Trek franchise, has one of the deepest character developments for not just Bashir, but all the characters.
Everyone. Yeah.
Odo, totally. It's just amazing.
Absolutely. These difficult characters to put your finger on. Although Renee turned it into, made him into an iconic figure for me. One of my favorite characters was Odo. And obviously Armin turned what was overly comedic Ferengi into something with more meat, and found ways to express himself and stay funny and be the most popular character on the show. Incidentally, he was constantly the most popular character when they polled the characters. Everybody, Avery, I mean, captains don't usually go any further. Commanders don't go any further than they sort of stay a solid plateau character. But Avery had to do this whole trajectory and eventually became a god, I think. I'm not quite sure how. So that's quite a trajectory right there. And Colm, who had already, I think he developed more on Deep Space Nine than he did on the years he was on The Next Generation. So everybody just put the pedal to the metal. And I think the reason for that is the studio just ignored us. They just weren't interested. And when the studio are interested in you, you've got a problem, because they micromanage everything. And they don't want anything to change, because if something's working, why fix it? And that in a way, the Next Generation were unfortunate, because they got all the studio pressure and they were forced to do some cookie cutter things they didn't want to do.
Sure.
And Deep Space didn't have to do any of that. So Ira just went, okay, they're not watching, I'm going to do this, and serialize the show. A show which, by the way, makes its money by stripping to the syndication, by selling to all the different channels around the country, who then enjoy the privilege of putting those shows on at their leisure, in any order they please, which worked just great with Next Generation, because there's no particular line you have to follow. There were subtle lines, of course, between, Gates and Picard, and everybody had their subtle trajectories. But you did that to Deep Space Nine. So you jumble it all up, which they did. People didn't know what the hell they were watching. So it's only now that we have everybody understands that you watch things in order. You don't jumble the songs in an album.
I wanted to go back to something that you mentioned earlier. You talked about how, the writers, I guess, initially had this love affair in mind for you and Terry, and then Andy Robinson walked in the door. So one of my questions is, one of the most popular things about DS9 that I hear a lot from family members is the relationships are really deep and complex. And two of the most fan favorite relationships are between Bashir and O'Brien, and Bashir and Garrick. So I'm wondering if did those relationships sort of evolve organically off screen and then translate to what we see on the screen, or did it just kind of develop over the course of the show?
Well, I can answer definitely to Andy's, which was totally organic, to Garrick and Bashir. Who knows how many episodes you'd have seen Garrick in the show for, had he'd not done that acting, that slightly, whoa, what are you doing to me acting that he did. And that triggered something in the writers' imaginations. They went, there's a relationship here we can really mine. And it's on the edge of homoerotic, it's like, it's playing with fire a little bit. And that was really exciting to them, and quite rightly. So we went that way. And then conversely, with Colm O'Brien's character, that was a straight up guy bromance. You couldn't get more testosterone in that. That's full on, no hanging about, two boys. So I was very lucky as an actor, because I got to explore both sides of my femininity, masculinity, whatever you want to call it. So Bashir was kind of relatively feminine around Garrick in a sense, but very and Colm beat him up for it. O'Brien beat him up for it. He was like, there was always that sense that Bashir, you need to toughen up from O'Brien, between the O'Brien but they loved each other in a kind of Walter Matthau, Jack Lemmon kind of way, the odd couple sort of stuff. And I thought that was a really great, a really honest thing. That's how a lot of relationships are. Two guys get together and they talk about important stuff to them, and then they play games. And occasionally they get lost on a planet and have to fight their way out, which is the Star Trek bit.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. I did personally, I love the relationship between Chief O'Brien and Bashir. So
beautiful.
I always wondered if there was like a really deep friendship with you and Colm outside of
no. I mean, we
Really?
are friends. Obviously, we like each other, and I adored him, and we would go drinking. I mean, he liked to entertain. We hired a limousine once, just the two of us, on St. Patrick's Day, and went to all the Irish bars, which is kind of a groovy way of doing a pub crawl. If you can, and I think limousine is like $300, so not the end of the world, and you don't get any citations. You don't feel terrible about getting in your car. You just drink and have fun and get back in the limo and go to the next place. And that was a great night. And that was, so I guess we were friends because we just did that together. And we drank together. I didn't get to meet his family though, or anything like that. But we definitely hung out.
Yeah, I could see
Sounds like a lot.
that brother-ly love there.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah, he gave me a hard time because of my Englishness. The Irish don't have the best relationship with the Brits, so he was kind of begrudging that. Yeah.
So moving on from the relationship,
Is that Randy I can see there?
yes, Randy is with us.
Hi,
Hello,
Randy.
Oh yeah.
Randy Flug.
Randy recently joined us in the Star Trek family, and he's been such a joy to have.
And he was Colin's double, you know, he was the main man, stuck to Colin for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
That is correct. Am I still muted? Hi there, Sid.
Hi, Randy. It's lovely to see you again, my friend.
Nice to see you again. I had a beard the last time I saw you, but not today.
You look like you always look, Danny. You don't change. You looked exactly like that all the way through Deep Space Nine.
Well, you know, I'd say the same about you, but it's funny, we can turn on the TV and see our younger selves, and it's almost shocking. I mean,
yeah.
it was 30 years ago. You look like a baby then.
Yeah, I did, and had a fabulous hair and everything.
So good to see you, man. I just wanted
Thank
to
you,
say
Randy.
hi, and I won't take over the show here, but talking about O'Brien and Bashir, you know, I was
Yeah.
there for all those scenes because
Yeah,
I was
you
just
watched them
standing-
all.
Do you remember the one where you guys got drunk and sang together?
Oh yes.
I think it was called Fortune Favors the Bold, I think. At any rate, do you also remember that in the original script you were going to sing Louie Louie? I
No,
wanted to see that. So, oh, dude, I swear to God, I talked to Bobby D, our unit production manager, because it was in the original script that you guys were going to sing Louie Louie. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, I cannot wait to see
Did
this.
Colin put an end to that?
But so they changed it to the British song Jerusalem, I think it's called.
Jerusalem.
Anyway,
Yeah.
it's public domain. And I asked Bobby D, I'm like, why would you change that? He goes, well, it was $12,000 for Louie Louie. And I'm like, but this is Star Trek.
Well, the good news was both of us knew Jerusalem, so that was a no-brainer for us. I hope you can't hear all this squeaking. My dog playing
Well,
outside.
nobody really, I'm sorry, but nobody really knows the words to Louie Louie either.
I have no idea.
I think I kind of
Anyway,
want to see that now.
Yeah.
It's good catching up with you, Randy.
So good to see you, man. By the way, I spoke to Armin on the phone about a week ago. He's doing good. He's got his third book in the trilogy out, and he's doing a book tour and everything. And so
He's
I
such a
just
talented
thought
man.
he's amazing.
Annoyingly talented.
And one of the best guys you'll ever meet,
He
too.
definitely is. Both he and his wife, they're both amazing creatures.
Yes. Okay, I'll stop talking so you can go on. But it's so good to see you, man. I'm enjoying these stories.
Right back at you, Randy.
Okay, take care, bro.
Okay.
All right. And I'm so glad to see Randy. It's always nice to have him on the Zooms with us.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's I mean, those guys, only 2 or 3 of the doubles actually stayed the whole time, and it's such hard work. You know, the actors can wander around and go off someplace, and people be like, we got to find Avery, he's gone somewhere, and they find him and they go, phew, let's do the show. Doubles can't do that. They have to be present every second of the day, concentrating, knowing exactly. Yeah, you know about it. Yeah, you can't. My wife was a double back in the day. I know that she tells me all about it from the shows she had to do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm often a firm believer that, because I don't know if you know this about us, Sid, but Lisa and I both worked in Hollywood for a time. I worked as a production assistant and then a second assistant director.
I didn't know that.
She's a SAG actor. She's a fellow SAG actress. So we both did about 8 or 10 years in the Washington, D.C. area. And then we went to LA for about 8 years. And
Yeah, I'm a
And then,
stunt driver. I do the driving.
Wow, okay, that's another incredibly tough job.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And a lot of standing because I'm tall.
Standing,
So I
yeah.
was standing for just about everybody and anybody that was over 5'10".
Wow, yeah, absolutely.
So I'm a firm believer, having been on set, that it's always nice to have the talent of the main actors, but it's really a combined effort between the creative behind the scenes professionals, the cameramen, the makeup artists, and all that, the background.
Absolutely.
Really
I mean,
does.
it's an orchestra, and you only hear one tune, but an orchestra makes that tune. And that's precisely how the TV show gets made. All 300, 450 people are all hands on deck all the time. And you see people, you know, construction workers, 4 or 5 construction workers or electricians, burly guys, you know, who've been around the block and in the union for years. And they're shouting and banging stuff. And then someone says, rings a bell, and they just go, they freeze. And we shoot the scene. And the bell goes again. It's like, okay, let's pull that up. Let's do this. Boom, boom. So everything is a hive of activity until that bell goes, and then everybody's free. You could hear a pin drop, and we do the quietest scene, you know. And they say cut. The whole place explodes into action again. You will well know that.
And that's the
It
fun
does.
part,
It
yeah.
does.
But if I may say something about DS9 is that every single character just got, you could see that they all professionals, but they all connected with
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
And you can see it, you can
chemistry.
feel it. Yeah, the love, the chemistry, and oh my God, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
You don't
Well,
see that
that's-
anymore.
It's something you learn. I mean, nearly all of us came out of theatre, and it's even in my very limited experience, I still came out of theatre. I'd done dozens of plays and been with a company of actors for a long time. And the shows keep changing, but the actors stay the same. And that's when you have a really fortunate start in the work business. And Avery, Renee, Armin, nearly everyone had come out of theatre. So you learn that the relationship is the most important thing about a show, because the character, if you, they can have the greatest plot, the most wonderful plot, but if people don't fall in love with the characters, you're done for. Because that's a relationship that lasts for years and years. And you can have a great Thanksgiving dinner, but if you don't like the people at that Thanksgiving dinner, you're
That's
done.
so true.
It doesn't matter how good the turkey is.
That is so true.
That is very true. That is very true. So, you know, in the 7 seasons that you guys did DS9, DS9 tonally was a little darker and more complex, and dealt with a lot of real world issues that were relevant to the real world. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is there a show that you are most proud of, a story that you're most proud of that you did while you were on this show, on DS9?
I think there are a great many. And I could be proud of a lot of them for different reasons. I mean, I loved The Wire because of what it did for my relationship with Andy. Again, a very tragic, beautiful reality that you know, chronic, terrifying illness arrives in every family. And so between 2 men who love each other in you know, as friends, that's almost catastrophic. Just so happened to be one of them was as a doctor. I thought that was really touching. Obviously, Far Beyond the Stars, which Avery directed, one of the most beautiful shows that has come out of the whole Star Trek genre, for my money. Past Tense, which was kind of prophetic about the troubles in LA right now, and the homelessness, the fact that the whole place had got, you know, post-apocalyptic. I think there's every season threw up a different show that was wonderful, a different set of shows that was wonderful. And I love the fact that the characters would take over the reins. So it would be a show about Quark and what's going on in his life, to a show about Odo and just progressing those people one at a time. So if you have a favorite ice cream, it's going to come round. It's okay. That ice cream is coming any minute. There's only 7 or 8 of us, so within 7 or 8 shows, you're going to get back to us. And so that allowed us to develop in leaps and bounds. I obviously loved Man Bashir for what it did for Bashir. I think it changed a lot of people's opinion of him. I think people were really confused in the early days about Bashir because he was so human, so vulnerable, so flawed. Mm-hmm. Just a kid, really, a college grad who just arrived and was arrogant and dumb like a college grad, thinks they know everything, but know nothing. And that show just made people go, "Ooh, wait a minute, you can do that." All right. That's kind of what I was looking for in my young, male leads. I'm on. I'm signing on. So it changed a lot of opinions of the character, which was great. And then the writers could build on that. So you know that he can do that kind of flash stuff if he has to do it. So we'll go further down that road. And or every character had those shows. And of course, there was the Trouble with Tribbles, which was like a revolutionary show. We really used the early nascent graphics technology that was beginning to be explored and developed. Boom, and there I was in a line with Colm and all the classic actors and Shatner walking down the thing. It's like, wow, it's amazing. So I think there were a lot of wonderful shows that I could point to. My memory is not great, and I have to say I maybe only watched maybe 4 or 5 shows in the whole 7 years that we did them. I read every one, of course, but I couldn't watch them too. That was just impossible. And I hate watching myself on screen. It's a bit like,
Really?
looking at your own photographs. Who gets a kick out of looking at their own photographs? It's a nightmare. It's a perfectly good show until that guy comes in.
Oh my gosh. Well, I would tend to agree that Bashir started off as this sort of young, vulnerable, like you said, college grad. But by the time we get to the end of the show, he's really developed into this, very strong, sort of mature presence on the show, and I really loved his development.
Yeah, you
my
can see
question.
how. Yeah.
Please.
No, it's fine. I'm much more interested in what you have to say.
It was just the question.
You can see how McCoy got to McCoy, and you can see how Crusher got to Crusher. The early years, that there must have been a time when they weren't great. When McCoy wasn't berating Shatner for something, for Captain Kirk, for his habits, his bad habits, his heart. And McCoy was a kind of curmudgeonly doctor from that era who, would tell his patients in a rough voice, "This is what you got to do." And you knew he was the expert, so you did it. And then Crusher was the kind bedside manner, the mom everybody would love to have, or in my case, I'm sure I had a crush on her, because I wouldn't have thought of it as I wasn't thinking of much at mom level, but I got to fill in the gap of, then this is how they got to that place. They didn't start off that way. They all had to find their way into the business, into the profession, what kind of doctor they wanted to be. But the one thing they all had in common was they weren't good at it at the beginning, and they weren't great humans either. No one is.
Yeah.
It's true. It's very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Thank you for that. Looking back 30 years now, or rather 23 years since the end of the show, do you feel like Bashir is a character that you've sort of left behind? Or if given the chance, would you like to explore more about the character? Has there been any talk of you reprising your role on a newer show?
There hasn't. But it's kind of interesting. You don't leave a character behind if you're an actor. I mean, you drag them all with you. Even the ones that you're not terribly happy about, and you like to, because you spend such a lot of time in their skin. And even in the intervening 23 years, as you were mentioning, I played quite a few different characters, and I sort of, they're all in me, like some crazy cacophony of, like, I've been possessed by 400 people, and they all rise to the surface from time to time. But Bashir, I think I'm probably most fond of, because I suppose that even though I didn't invent those words, and I couldn't possibly have done the things that he did in the show, he was largely me. And you can probably, people watching in the room here today are probably like, it's not a long way, but not a big distance between this guy and the character he played. I'm just 59 or 8 or whatever I am now. which is a very different thing. But he was always based on me. I mean, I had no other material to work with. That was all I got. And I could look back because he was younger than me and a little bit more immature than I am. So I could just rewind myself 3 years and go, I remember when I was that much of an idiot. I will do that again. And so it was luckily I could reprise me, which not many people get to do because they've got tons of makeup on or a big suit or there's a lot at stake. And so that was his vulnerability too. People didn't like him because they saw a real human being there they didn't like.
Yeah.
Boom. There's no equivocate. There's nothing to hide behind. And so that had its good side and its bad side.
Understandable. Personally, he's one of my favorite characters.
Thank you.
So that was my last question. Would you mind if I open up the room to questions?
Sure, absolutely.
All right, let's see those hands.
Okay,
I'm going to call on you one at a time. Make sure you unmute yourself, ask your question, and then remute. And then make sure you put your hand down at the end of your question. That way we can move on to the next. Do you want to ask the first one?
Yes,
Go ahead.
please. Okay, now going back to your the way you saw yourself as Bashir, how did you prepare yourself? Did they give you the medical terms that you just said, or did you do research as a doctor and see what they did? Or
I started by doing research, and then I very quickly stopped because it was absolutely pointless. The real medical procedures just don't translate. I mean, that some of the terminology does. Like, there's a preganglionic structure, and I could look that up, and or somebody had some problem, and I would fix them with a little tube and a box, and you just had to make that as believable as possible. Like, as long as he believed that was doing, he knew that equipment was doing its job. The real world just doesn't reflect that, and also the sense of you notice that there's no sense of disinfectant or cleanliness. There's no face masks or washing hands, or you assume that there's a kind of field of disinfectant going through everything, so no one can get infected. So all the processes of actual surgical work and actual being a doctor, and the time it takes to deal with patients was kind of skirted over for good reason, because it's a lot of it's very boring. But yes, I stopped doing that, and I just waited for the words to come, and we called it sort of techno babble. And sometimes when it was just too, we'd been working too hard, and it was really the last day of something tragic, and they gave me like that much techno babble in one shot, I would just tape it to someone's back. Just read it. Or I'd tape it on my tricorder or my thing if it was really complicated, because everybody wants to go home, and there's no way that we can do that. I mean, a lot of that's what I would do if it was difficult. I mean, you take a hit on your pride as an actor doing that, so you do that really sparingly, and none of us really did that very often. But when it came to it and we wanted to get everybody home that night, just tape it up, Sid. Screw it, we haven't got time for this. Put it on get it on there.
Cool.
Whatever works, right?
Well,
whatever works.
Mr. Donald.
Hi, how are you?
Hi,
sorry.
Donald.
So, as the role of Bashir, I mean, you had a lot of opportunities, especially with the holodecks through Quarks, when you did the spy stories and things like that.
Yeah.
Was there ever a role either in Star Trek or in any series or things that you would love to do, or felt like you wanted to do in the show?
That's a question I sometimes get asked, and I for very good reason too. But when you look like me, and I'm not white, and I'm particular, there are so many roles I'll never be able to do, even if I wanted to. I am never going to play Winston Churchill, for example. It's just not going to happen. I don't care how, whatever happened in the gamut of things. I will never be, FDR. I'll never play Kennedy. I'll never, there's all these people I'll never get to play. And it was a real struggle just to get to play like Hamlet, for people in the communities of color. And eventually that kind of broke through, and famously Othello. So I don't do any guessing about that. I think the greatest part hasn't been written yet, and that's where I live. I am still waiting for that magnificent role that will come, knocking on the door one day, hopefully. So that's my honest answer. Otherwise, I could easily say, yeah, I want to be Robin Hood.
Definitely understandable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sid,
Always
I
looking
think
for the
Pantogram is
horizon.
a great role for you.
Oh, thank you, Randy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject, but seriously,
cool.
that
That's
role
cool.
fits you so well, and it's a really
you.
good show.
Thanks.
Sorry, not my turn.
You're totally fine. You're totally fine. Mr. Joshua, your question.
I know you were a while ago. You spoke about doing stage stuff, and me and my wife for Christmas Eve we watched the Nativity Story
Oh, yeah.
each year,
Yeah.
and
It's a staple.
Josh,
Wonderful.
did you have a follow-up question with that?
He got muted.
and it's just one of those that we really enjoyed. That
It is true. And there have been, over the years, if it hadn't been for the Nativity Story and the fact that every village, every town has their version, every high school, every college, there'll be a lot of actors who'd never have made it to the stage. So that kind of, that's one of the birthing ponds of actors. And I always encourage people who ask me, how do I start acting? There is no answer, but to actually try it out with your local community is by far the best way, because A, you find out whether you become so petrified you can't walk on stage, which sometimes happens, and B, you learn what the audience like and what they don't like, because you begin to form a relationship with them, which is what you can only do on a live stage. That's great, Joshua.
Miss Ellie.
Hi. I just want to let you know that your performance as the Mirror Universe Bashir was amazing.
Thank you.
And I really enjoyed that. And also, I have a question, because I am playing Star Trek Online, and there is a full Deep Space Nine chapter. How do you feel voice your character in that game?
Oh, I have no problem with that. I thought it was great. I mean, when I first heard about that game, I offered to them that I would happily be the prize at the end of one quest line, so that they could meet me. Whoever was playing that quest line, whoever completed that quest line, would actually get to meet me, talk to me. It's like the guy at the end of the quest line. I never actually heard back from them on that, but maybe I talked to the wrong person, because it would have been. I love gaming, so I know the quest lines and how important they are and how much fun they are, and the prizes are always like really great. So that was my idea. So I don't mind. I have no problem with that at all. I love anything that makes those games more immersive and fun. I mean, I think there are a lot of, because one of the things I loved about gaming is I would make friends with 3 or 4 people, people I would regularly meet online. I didn't know them in real life. I didn't know who they were. I didn't know anything about them except what they told me about them. And we never talked about personal stuff. So I knew that guy was a really good tank. He was really good with a sword and shield. And then that guy was a great healer mage. And we formed relationships that way. But I did learn eventually, after about 7 years playing one game, that one guy had never been out of his wheelchair. I never knew that, but he had this whole life, and friends who knew him to be the person who was all over the place and amazing at doing things that we weren't good at. So I love the fact that it's an opportunity for people to try something different and try out different versions of themselves. And I really enjoyed that as a youngster growing up. So that was really cool for me.
And also, I want to say it was 1 year since I first spoke with you on the CityNet Zoom meeting. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much. It's just lovely to see you again. It
No
really
problem.
is.
Thank you for your question, Ellie. Miss Jane.
I'll try not to be too nervous.
Hello, Jane.
Hi.
Hi.
I had the pleasure of meeting you at Destination in Birmingham in 2018, which was wonderful, absolutely amazing. I've always loved your work. I'm a big fan of Poirot as well, and I loved you in that when you replaced Aitana, which was fantastic.
The naughty Poirot.
Yeah, absolutely. My question is though, were you happy with the storyline when they found out Bashir was genetically modified and, was like this super brain? Because personally, I loved it because I thought it gave such an extra layer to him.
Yes.
And when he could start showing his superpowers, thought it was fantastic. I thought you did it amazing.
I like it now, Jane. I'm on reflection with 2020 vision, hindsight. But at the time, I was furious. I was fuming because they just dropped it in my lap, this whole thing, one particular Thursday evening. And we were filming on a Monday or a Tuesday. And I would have loved to have been able to bed that in, put subtle things over the months before that, but something weird about Bashir. There's not quite, so that would become a revelatory experience. Oh, okay, his parents really kind of abused him, and they didn't mean to abuse me, but they did. They messed with me in a way that no one should be messed with. So I would have loved to have just bedded it in, really organic. And it's unfortunately the way things work in Hollywood is if someone has an idea on a Tuesday and it's done Wednesday. Boom, there you go.
That's it. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jane.
All right, Mr. Seawit. Chris, yes, that's what I thought.
Hey, Chris.
Hi, Sid. I don't mean to stretch your memory too much. I wanted
Careful,
to
it
ask you.
snaps easy. My memory snaps if it gets stretched.
Well, I wanted to talk to you about a particular episode. Lately, I've been talking about more musical numbers in the series. All the ones I've seen have been fantastic. And one of the ones that stands out in my memory more than most is an episode called Chrysalis. It was Bashir and his genetically modified, I don't know what you'd call them, crew.
Yeah, the kids.
The three patients.
No, there were four.
4 patients.
Yeah, 4 patients. Yeah.
And they did a musical number, the Do Re Mi. They were teaching one of them how to speak with inflection. Right. And I always wondered if the actors actually performed that or if it was voiceover or what, because it sounded fantasation.
Well, if it sounded fantastic, it probably was a voiceover. Okay. That's one. I mean, I haven't got a terrible voice, but it's not professional quality.
Well, Bashir didn't actually sing in that one. But
good. Thank God for that.
He watched them. And they were doing Do Re Mi.
Oh well, yeah, they would have been them. It would have been them.
It was the actual actors.
Absolutely, they would have found youngsters who could sing well, and they absolutely would have done that. I mean, when you see someone actually singing on camera, they're singing. They don't put someone else's voice on there. That would be so disrespectful. So they, you know, from in this crooning in Quarks and all of that, obviously world famous singer, that guy. But you can rest assured, unless it's me caterwauling away, they're genuine voices.
Well, thank you, because I've wondered that for a very long time.
I will happily put you straight there, Chris.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. Miss Mona.
Hi, Sid. Thank you for this.
Hey, Mona.
My first time here.
Welcome.
To follow up on the augmentation conversation, I
Yes.
really enjoyed that. And I don't know if you're aware of it, but one of the new shows, Prodigy, has a character who found out recently that he is an augment.
Yeah. And
they have referenced you in that show. So as a follow-up to that, I don't remember the exact episode because it's been many years.
And you're human.
Really, yeah, I think I am. I was not augmented. But I believe Dr. Bashir went to work for 31 for a very short period of time also after that. And I wanted to get your opinion on that.
Well,
now that I have your opinion on augment.
I definitely have an opinion on that, Mona. There's on the augment, I can just finish by saying that I was really cynical. Our show wasn't doing great in the ratings at the time. And we all thought, well, they're going to do things to make us a bit more like Next Generation, which was a fantastic show, as I've already explained, but we didn't want to do that. So when that augment thing came in, and suddenly Bashir was able to calculate huge, very big numbers very easily, which he'd never done before, I found that like Data-esque. And I thought, oh, they want to turn Bashir into a Data type of character. So that I didn't like that. I love Data. I didn't want to be him. And there was a time on the Defiant when I estimated the amount of time it would take for an incoming missile to get to us, given the trajectory and the velocity and all that. And I was like, and I remember going, I just don't want to say this. It's too much like Data, and I am not a robot. And so I threw all those lines away when they gave me them. And eventually they stopped doing it, because why bother writing and the guy's not going to say it properly. So I would go, you know, they would say, so how long before it gets here? And I'd be like, 45 seconds. I don't know. They just like,
that's funny.
Put some effort into it. And I was like, 46.3, 40, something. So they eventually stopped the datafication of Bashir, which I was very happy about. And as far as Section 31 is concerned, I think Section 31 is such an opaque organization and really crosses some boundaries as far as Starfleet are concerned. Apart from the time travel and everything like that, which crosses boundaries just by itself ethically. I think you would never know where Bashir is in that. I think he's become too good by that point to be able to. He's learned enough from Garak. He may say he's nothing to do with it anymore, and I don't know if that's true. I think that Section 31 exposes a genuine dark side to Bashir.
Yes, it did to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you too.
It seems like it's a natural progression. We've seen our man Bashir, where you're the secret agent, you're the James Bond type, and then you plop into Section 31. It seems like a natural progression for his character to be interested in something like that. So
yeah, it's also something you can't dip in and out of. You can't get to that level of classification and then just go and do something else. They don't let you do that. So I mean, once you join an organization like that, I suspect it's a pretty much a lifetime thing.
Lifetime membership.
Yep.
Ms. Tara, your question?
Hi. At the risk of repeating everybody else, I just want to
repeat away, Tara.
Okay, I'm good at that. I'd like to thank you for doing this because I've never had an opportunity to do something like this, and it's super cool.
You have the family to thank for that.
Yes, I do. But you and Mona just stole my question. So I
calling the
know,
police.
I know. So I'm just gonna invent something, which is, have you ever considered going on the cruise?
I did consider it.
Mhm.
And then COVID arrived.
Hmm.
And there was a brief window. I am not a big fan of big ships. And I don't say I don't get claustrophobic, but I find that I'm generous with my time to a fault. And I get into a cycle where I just am there all day going, and how can I help you? And what can I do for you?
Yeah.
And when you're in a confined area like that, where the only exit is certain death, I would be in real, I think I would be in real trouble. But my wife, Shana, really loves the idea of a cruise. She's never been on a cruise, and she's a romantic. So she loves the idea of sitting by a pool on a deck chair on a boat with a cocktail. And so she convinced me to do it. And then COVID came. And she hasn't asked me to do it again since. So I'm not sure that I will.
Well, the Star Trek cruise might not be the place to have that imaginary, pina colada by the pool.
Well, she'd find a way to make it work for herself. She always does, she'll just, run a hot tub and have a cocktail bite if she's having a tough time. She won't worry too much. And also it would be lovely to see everybody, like Nana and Terry and everybody, and hang out for a long time. Who knows? I might be able to do it.
Well, I'll just say it would be lovely to see you with everyone like that. It would,
We're
it
all
would be
going.
great.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be there.
I'll
Yeah,
take
me
that
too.
under consideration. I'm such a terrible conventioneer.
Thank you.
Speaking of being very generous with his time, we have about 10 minutes left. So I probably have a room for about one or two more questions. I'm really sorry if I don't get to everybody's question. Carrie and Eric Schwent, I think you were the next one I saw.
Yeah, hi there.
Hello.
So
It's nice to meet you.
Yeah. So I've been a part of the Sirach's Seventh Rule podcast for a little while now. I've been having a blast with it.
That's
And I've
wonderful.
heard the self-stealing stumble story over and over. Do you have a scene or anything that you can remember that took you like maybe not 19 takes, but like 10?
Oh, there were several.
Forever.
There were several. But I think a lot of the time it depends on what the director is looking for. So director who sometimes, if they're not absolutely certain, they will just go again and again and again. And we turn to them and go, dude, it's TV. All right. Get over yourself. And there were a few, but there was a song called Anna Moraine, I think.
Yes,
We had to
Anna
sing.
Moraine.
Yeah.
And we looked and sounded like kindergarten children
Yes.
with really unhappy faces, which we were just not hiding very well.
So that was
And we did that song over and over and over, like for hours.
With
and
the hand movements.
Yeah, absolutely. And I swear to God, that Avery, who has one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard, who is
yes.
a professional singer if he wanted to be,
Mm.
like Paul Robeson quality. There was a point where I think that if someone had looked at him wrong, he would have shattered their face with his fist. And he could do that, he meets you, where the rubber hits the road. That dude is never caught napping. He will, if he's got a real problem, he'll let you know. And his voice goes deep and growly and
yeah, Sirach's told enough stories. I could picture that easily.
So I think that would be the one that really sticks out, because it's no fun doing that kind of thing when you are not enjoying it. I would equate it to having a sex scene, which actors have to do, with someone you find really unattractive.
Mm.
Can you imagine that is, and you just have to do it again and again and again and kiss them again and look like you're loving it. That is one of the worst things about acting. Sometimes you just can't get away from that idea that it's like, I have to do a love scene with this person. So yeah, that was the way. And the other thing that took me many takes was eating. I think it looked like limes to people. They ate a lime and they gave me kiwi fruits. And I ate a lot of kiwi fruits. And so many, in fact, that I burnt the top layer of my tongue off. I had absolutely no idea. You know, you don't realize it until after, when you try something else.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because there's enough acid, and it could be alkaline. I don't know, because I was always dumbfounded by the whole lemon thing. What do you mean that's alkaline? But it was enough astringency in a kiwi fruit. So my advice is 1 kiwi fruit is enough. Don't eat 14.
Don't eat 14. That's good life advice. I like that.
That's a good, life advice. That's all I got.
And come on the cruise. You'd have so much fun, I promise.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Miss Carmet.
Hi. Sorry. Okay, so the thing with Bashir and Gara kind of getting together, I have to admit, I never ever saw that, and people started talking about it on Facebook, and I'm like, where is this coming from? What are they seeing that I'm not? So I put it into a thread, and then somebody responded with the perfect proof. It was the first time that you had lunch together. Garrick's right behind you, and then the guy said, pay specific attention to Bashir's body language, and you looked so awkward. It was like, do I welcome him or do I not? Like, you didn't know what to do with yourself.
that was the moment that that particular scene that when you talk about chemistry, that is what it looks like. Everybody bandies that word about, but it's not a continuum. It's not a monolith. It's a moment, and it's something you see that is just given away. I couldn't hide it as me, and Bashir couldn't hide it. And it just got out of the bag, and everybody went, uh-oh.
So that was completely natural. It just happened to you.
Yes, it just happened. And
it was perfect. They should have continued that.
Well, they did, but they realized it is 1992. You want to keep it really open. You want a lot of question marks, and I think that was a good thing. I think we should still keep a lot of question marks, and so people who want to take that can take that, or if they want to take something else from that, they take something else from that. But the character definitely would have been written out if that had been more obvious. Society was not ready for that.
That's right. And one thing that I'm pretty sure you've heard before, but I've always wanted to say this to you, the first time I saw your entire name written out, the first thing that went through my mind is, how the hell does he remember all that?
I don't. That's the answer, Carmen. I don't remember it all. It is something that people have to remind me of all the time. It's just, you know what it is? It's just the line of men going back 150 years. And it's not a fair line either, because they've left out all the ones that didn't achieve anything that they thought was interesting, and only included the ones that really did something they thought was interesting. So it's a weird line. I skip people, and I wonder if I'm going to get skipped.
No.
Thanks, Carmen.
All right, Carmen, thank you for your question. Last question. I'm really sorry I can't get to all of them, but Mr. Randy.
Hi.
You're
Sure, I don't want to cut somebody else out, but man, listening to all this is bringing back so many memories, and I was there for all these things. I wanted to go back to Chrysalis. I only had lines 3 times in all the 7 years that I was there. Yeah. And one of them was in Chrysalis. I had 1 line. I got to ask a stupid question to one of the enhanced folks. They were wandering around the hallways, and I came out as a security guard and said, "May I help you?" And they said, "That's a stupid question." But Sid, that was actually partly thanks to you that I got that line. You may not know this, but this was an episode where you were in like every scene, right? And in the original script, Jonathan West was directing, and he said, "Hey, Randy, there's this guard part, and he has a line." And I said, "Yeah, but it's never going to happen." And they cut it out like I knew they would. Yeah. But you actually called out sick one day. Your family was in town or something, is what I heard through the grapevine.
Yeah,
And,
my mom came and she wasn't.
Okay, and so you called out. And so they were frantically looking for things to shoot that didn't have you in it. So they put my scene back in.
Fantastic. Fantastic, Randy. Well,
So
you could clear up something. I should ask you a question. You should clear up something that a lot of people don't realize, because a lot of the time people say, well, why don't you get a line? It's ridiculous, because all you're doing is saying hi, and you don't get to do that. And the answer is no. And the reason is complex contractual issues and SAG but what how firsthand. So why did that happen? Why was it so hard to get a line?
That's a great question that I've never fully known the answer to. What I do know, because I worked on Next Generation first, and everybody was non-union back then. There was no SEG when I started on, you know what I mean? So the first time I was union was when I started on Deep Space Nine.
Right.
Which was wonderful and great. And anyway, I know that Rick Berman had a rule that no stand-in or extra would ever get a line again, meaning somebody did. And I don't to this day know who it was, but somebody made them really unhappy on Next Generation. And Rick Berman made a rule that we were never going to do that again.
Well, I suspect that's true.
So I knew about, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I suspect that's true. But what I think happens as well, and people can correct me on this, is the minute you say a line, you trigger a day player contract.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Suddenly earn another bunch of cash.
Yes, in fact, my day got a whole lot better when I got that one line. It was at the very long end of a 16-hour day. In fact, the AD said, sign out as a stand-in at midnight and sign back in as an extra. Well, SAG would not allow that. So I got paid an actor day the whole day. Anyway.
Yeah. And if you had been a non-SAG actor, you would then be eligible for SAG. And that triggers a whole bunch of other problems. So there is a weird reason why that doesn't work.
Right, but it's about money. You know what I mean? It's like it's a lot cheaper to have me sit at Odo's desk and have him talk to me and me not say anything back than for me to say one line because my pay goes way up.
Then let me ask you, Randy, did you ever get credit?
Only when I had lines. So 3 times.
So 3 episodes.
Exactly. Well, that's your reason right there. If you get credit, no matter how long the show is, you get residuals.
Oh, I'm aware.
A lot of cash. You get residuals so long your name is on the credits.
Right.
And
so
that's the only way you're gonna get. You say a line, your name is on the credits. So it's they not only did they have to bump you and pay you more, then when it went in syndication, whew,
yeah,
you should be getting checks still today.
A whole lot of work for
that line
to make sure you're in the system. Yeah.
And so then, okay, I won't keep going, but then the other thing that keyed me was the chemistry and magic between you and Andy. I was there. I was standing in for O'Brien wasn't working that day, so I was standing in for Andy, who I fully know who he is now, and I knew who he was then if I knew who was behind the mask, but I didn't. And so I was just watching this scene and this great actor who I had no idea who he was doing this stuff with you. And during one of the breaks, I told Andy, I said, I love what you're doing. And he said, oh, thanks, man. And I said, are they going to bring you back? He goes, I don't know. They won't tell me. and then later I found out who he was. I mean, I had seen Dirty Harry and all those things. And but so I only knew him in his makeup. And one day, months later, I was standing outside and him and a couple other people walked up, but Andy was not wearing his makeup. And he goes, hi, Rand. And I swear to God, I looked at him and I go, who is it? And he said, it's Andy. I felt stupid. But then I said to him, I said, you look like Liberace. And he goes, I played Liberace in a movie. And I'm like, I must have seen that one.
He did. He did.
Anyway, all right.
did.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much,
Randy.
Sid, for doing this. It was so good to see you and talk to you again. And thank you,
Thank
Mark and Lisa, for having this. I love the Star Trek family. You guys are great.
Thank
And I'll stop talking. Have a good day.
Good to see you again, Randy.
Good to see you, Randy.
You too.
Well, all right, folks, that's all the time we have for today's live Zoom Q&A. If you haven't had a chance to see Sid in person at a convention, you really should go see him. He's a very personable fellow, and we really enjoy talking to him. We met you in Chicago, actually.
We met you in Chicago.
Okay, yeah, all right, then maybe I am.
And Sid also has a fan club called the Sid City Social Club, which if you're not part of that, highly recommend that. It's a wonderful organization. They do a lot of really great things, and they also do some Zoom meetings like this. So I'll have some information up on the Facebook page about where you can go find that. Okay. Personally, I want to take a moment and just genuinely thank Sid for joining us today. We're very honored and we're very thankful that you took the time.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you for all your hard work. I think he deserves a big bajoran round of applause for everything he did on DS9. Yes. Awesome. Thank you again so much. And
Thanks, guys.
live long and prosper, and have a wonderful evening.
Indeed. Thank you very much.
And hope to see you soon and do this again.
I hope so too. Thank you very much for your hospitality.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sid.
Thank you.
Amazing.
I'd call that a definite success.
Wow.
Yes,
That was great.
fantastic.
And that was the very first time I've ever spoken to any actor before.
I know, it surprised
Really?
me. Weren't you with us at Billingsley?
No,
You didn't say a word.
no, I wasn't on with Billingsley, I thought.
I think I was on that one, but I didn't say anything.
So let's do Nana and Michelle. I can help with that.
All right, I'll be reaching out to you because we definitely want to set these up.
Because I have to say personally, I love them both. They are just amazing, and I can go all of. I'm just speechless. Talk about them.
It was a fun time.
Yeah.
It was like I said, we met him in Chicago at the Chicago convention, and just a really down to earth, really nice guy to talk to, and really just loves engaging with the fans. I know he said a minute ago that he wasn't a very good conventioneer, but I don't really believe that.
Yeah,
because
I don't think so. I've seen it many times.
when you're standing in line watching him engage with all the people that are in line in front of you, and then you get up there, he's just so personal. He loves talking to the fans, and
when his page with his club, he does Zooms just about at least once, twice a month.
He does.
He's constantly. Now I have to say, I wasn't expecting him to be as chatty.
Well,
he really loves to talk, and it's amazing the stories that I was like so engaged that I totally forgot where I was. And I'm sorry, I totally forgot everybody around me. I was just
he loves talking about his work. I mean, that's something we should all aspire to, right?
It is so amazing.
I was going to say,
so charming.
Are we going to stop recording?
Yes, we can stop recording at this point.